Okay, let's dive in. We are unpacking the start of a really major new sermon series from Living Water Community Church,
That's right. It was preached by Pastor Matt Erdos, and the series is called The Five T's.
the 5 T's. So that's time, talent, testimony, temple, and treasure. It's a whole framework for, biblical stewardship.
And for this deep dive, we've tailored it just for you, focusing specifically on that first and I think foundational tea time.
Right.
Our mission here is to go through it, pull out the core wisdom, and really distill it down into 3 actionable, practical insights you can use, like today, not just something you think about on Sunday.
And the moment you even start thinking about stewardship, the big idea, it shifts immediately.
hmm
The central thesis of this whole message, and it's really the anchor for the other 4 T's, is that time is not something you just spend.
Right, it's not like loose change.
Exactly. It's something God has actually entrusted to you.
And that's the critical distinction. If you're getting ready for a meeting or you're just curious about how faith can influence, say, management theory, this is the starting point.
Okay.
The entire theology of stewardship rests on one simple fact.
Yeah.
God is the owner. We're just the temporary managers, the steward.
So we don't possess it, we're just accountable for it.
Exactly. And that framework, that just immediately takes us into our key point 1, which is where the sermon kicks off.
And that is acknowledging the Creator's absolute authority and ownership. I mean, the message challenges you right out of the gate, saying God didn't create in time.
He created time itself.
Yeah.
And that's a huge theological point.
Yeah.
But it translates directly to our accountability.
Yeah. How so?
Well, if we're going to understand our obligation, we have to get the power of the Creator. The source points out that the very first name God is called in the Bible is Elohim.
Elohim, meaning God the Creator.
Precisely. It starts in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created. That title establishes his final say, his absolute authority over every single second that ticks by.
So if you try to limit God, if you say he didn't create time or that time is some, separate force.
Then the sermon argues your definition of him is just too small. You're trying to put an omnipotent being in a box. You're implying he's constrained by the very things he governs.
You're trying to measure the measurer.
Exactly. I mean, we humans, we obsess over our man-made complications, right? The Gregorian calendar, the Hebrew calendar, leap years, time zones.
All to try and control it.
We're trying to quantify something that fundamentally belongs to a power completely outside our system. The second you accept that God lives outside of time, it just redefines the value of the finite moments we have.
And that idea of absolute control, that's where the sermon gives this really remarkable historical example that just sticks with you.
Yeah, this is where the power of ownership is physically demonstrated. He brings up the story in Joshua 10.
Where the sun stands still.
For almost an entire day. And this wasn't some metaphor or a subtle shift. This was a physical cosmic stop, all to give his people a victory.
And what's so fascinating is the note that scientists, historically and even now, they've struggled to mathematically disprove an event like that.
Right.
They hit a wall in their calculations. They just kind of admit we can't calculate that missing time.
Which is such a monumental illustration, isn't it?
Yeah.
He held the sun back because he made it. He has total authority to just interrupt the natural clock.
And that certainty of ownership, that's what has to drive our response.
Exactly. If time is a gift, measurable, finite, coming straight from God's hand,
Yeah.
then you can't just dispose of it.
Which is what Psalms 90 says, teach us to number our days.
That we may gain a heart of wisdom. It's an instruction to calculate our own finite nature. It means every moment matters, not just for the task at hand, but for eternity.
Okay, so if step 1 is accepting the clock isn't ours, that it was entrusted to us then, how do we honor the Creator with this gift? And that leads us right into the second critical insight.
The practical application.
Right. Understanding and using time requires wisdom. It's about being intentional.
And this is that jump from, theology to street-level living.
Yeah.
We move from Genesis to this really practical mandate in the New Testament. Ephesians 5:15-16. It says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of your time, because the days are evil."
And I think we need to slow down there on that last part because the sermon makes a really crucial clarification. When Scripture says the days are evil, it doesn't mean time itself is evil.
No, not at all. It's the days, the context, the culture we're in that are getting worse. That makes it harder to stay focused, to be intentional.
So the wisdom is needed to navigate all the growing distractions.
That distinction is just paramount.
Yeah.
The enemy isn't the minutes themselves. It's the lack of wisdom in how we use them.
Right.
And to really reinforce the urgency of applying that wisdom now, the sermon uses two brilliant analogies.
Okay, the first one is a riddle. I'm tall when I'm young and grow shorter with age. What am I?
And the answer is a candle, which is just, it's a perfect illustration. Life isn't building up to some infinite point. It's literally burning down.
Every day, every year, your opportunity shrinks if you ignore it. Delay costs you something you can't get back.
And the second analogy, it drives home the urgency of right now, of today.
Yeah.
Imagine time as this massive, unending rope. That's eternity.
Okay.
Life on Earth. It's only this much of the rope, just a tiny fraction.
Wow.
And you combine that visual with James 4.14, which calls life a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes.
And you suddenly get the urgency of stewarding the little piece of rope you're holding right now.
It makes you wonder then, if this time is so finite, where is it all going?
And that's maybe the most critical part of this section, identifying what he calls the slow leaks.
Yes.
We rarely waste a huge chunk of time on purpose. You know, it bleeds out slowly through unwise passive living.
And the sermon lists these leaks so well because they are just so universal today. I mean, we're talking about passive consumption, doom scrolling.
TikTok, Instagram Reels, Threads, you name it, just endless scrolling.
And the constant notifications, the multitasking that just fragments our focus so we can never really get deep into anything.
That feeling of being perpetually distracted, it's a thief. And then there's the comparative pressure.
Oh, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Or I guess now it's keeping up with the perfect lives you see on social media. It just drains your energy.
Yeah.
And your time.
And of course, the classic binge watching, where, you know, just one more episode.
And suddenly it's 4 a.m.
Happens to the best of us.
But what stands out when you look at that list is how little active choice is involved. These are default settings. They don't require any effort, but they consume that finite resource.
So what happens when we acknowledge those leaks? What's the shift?
The shift is realizing time can't actually be lost, metaphysically. It can only be invested.
So you either invest it in social media, in anxiety, in worry, or you intentionally invest it.
Into the kingdom, into your family. But making that switch is hard. So where does the sermon suggest we find that time to invest?
It's about reclaiming the margins, choosing intentionality over convenience. The pastor shared this really powerful personal story about it.
How about his cultural shift, right?
Yeah, moving from being a truck driver where he was, you know, physically present but maybe emotionally distant, to being an at-home dad. And he said the value of his time was just redefined by being present, intentional.
And that story from Walmart is, wow. It's a sobering reminder of the stakes.
It really is. He said because he wasn't looking down, wasn't scrolling or distracted, he was just engaged. And he felt this prompting.
And he was able to intervene and prevent the attempted near abduction of his daughter, Daisy.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but the principle is universal, isn't it?
It is. Stewardship of time, being intentional, putting people and God's voice first.
Yeah.
It has profound consequences. It's way more than just finishing a to-do list.
And that idea of centering, it leads perfectly into our third and final key point.
Stewardship of time requires putting the kingdom in the absolute center of your life.
This is where we get that powerful statement. Show me your calendar, I'll show you your faith.
Oof.
Yeah. If you want to know what someone really believes, don't read their mission statement. Look at where they spend their most valuable, finite resource, time.
Prioritization is everything, and the sermon used this really dramatic visual object lesson to show the stability that centering provides. It's not just an organizational trick. It's about structural integrity.
Let's visualize this for everyone. Imagine your life, your calendar is like a wheel, and you have 4 strong people work, social obligations, distraction, and anxiety tolling on the edges.
Pulling it in all different directions.
Right. And if those 4 external forces are what control the edges of your life, the whole thing gets pulled thin, it fractures, and eventually it just collapses.
The moment the Lord, represented by this small volunteer, is placed right in the center, holding the core, he stabilizes everything.
So even if the external forces pull hard, you lose your job, distractions get worse, anxiety hits.
The life itself, it stays valuable and intact. Because the Creator is the anchor holding it all steady. The value doesn't depend on the performance of the edges.
And that is the practical application of Matthew 6.33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you.
Prioritize the center, and the peripheries fall into place.
But what about the person who hears this and just feels overwhelmed? You know, they look back and see years, maybe decades of squandered time, of slow leaks, Of focusing only on the edges?
That is where the sermon gives the greatest hope, the power of redemption.
Okay.
The creator is the only one who can redeem what we, the managers, cannot get back. And this is a really critical distinction. Redemption does not mean renewing the clock.
So you don't get the minutes back.
God doesn't rewind the tape. You don't get the literal days back that you wasted.
So if you don't get the minutes back, what exactly is restored?
3 things are restored, in the present and for the future. First is purpose, meaning kingdom impact. Your time, it becomes laser-focused on what matters eternally.
Okay, purpose. What's second?
Second is direction. You now know how to walk today. You gain wisdom for the steps right in front of you. And third is fruit.
Fruit, meaning?
Meaning you start producing a generational impact that actually transcends the time that was lost.
And the story of Grandpa Ernie from the sermon illustrates that so perfectly, that idea of generational fruit.
It really does. He didn't come to faith until much later in life. What was it, 55, 60 years old?
Something like that. And before that, he had a lot of conflict, a lot of lost years with his sons.
And he couldn't get those minutes back. But the time he invested after he surrendered, it was so intentional, so rooted in that new purpose and direction, it had an exponentially greater impact.
He became a pastor.
He did. And even though he'd lost years of, conventional presence, the quality and the faithfulness of the time he invested later on created what the sermon calls generational wealth.
Wow. The spiritual legacy he built in that short time changed the whole trajectory for his family.
And that is just bolstered by that final assurance from Joel 2.25. I will restore to you the years that the swarming locusts have used.
Now, we have to accept that consequences might remain. We still live in a fallen world.
Right. But the moment we turn to the creator of time, he immediately responds with redemption. He restores the value and the purpose of the time you have left.
The crucial takeaway here is so important. Redemption doesn't start with better scheduling software or a new calendar.
Or just trying to manage the external pressures harder? No. It starts with a simple foundational surrender of your heart. You let the creator of time restore your direction and purpose so you can steward the moments you have right now.
Okay, to wrap up our deep dive into this foundational T of time, let's bring it all together. Let's recap those 3 key takeaways you can apply to make a difference in your life today.
First one, acknowledge God as the ultimate owner of time. That shifts you from being a consumer to a conscientious manager of the finite gift he created.
Number 2, commit to using wisdom to identify and seal those slow leaks. And that means actively fighting passive consumption, turning off notifications, rejecting the comparative pressures that drain your irreplaceable time.
And 3, put the kingdom in the center of your calendar. Seeking his righteousness first restores stability, it restores purpose, and it ensures the time you invest yields lasting generational fruit.
You know, the power of this whole message, it's rooted in the belief that the God who created time isn't some distant clockmaker. He is standing right here in this moment with you.
Ready to defeat the busyness, the anxiety, the distraction the enemy uses to steal our focus.
You may not be able to get yesterday's minutes back, but through that surrender and then that intentional stewardship, you can repeat today with profound purpose and direction.
And this deep dive, it was only the first T time. We still have talent, testimony, temple, and treasure left in this series.
So we'd encourage you to just reflect on what it means to be a manager of your time, because that foundation, it really dictates how you manage everything else.
We look forward to exploring the next T with you.